Right, hello everyone. Hopefully the people at home can hear me or wherever office they're in today, as well as the guys in the room. I've taken a bold approach to this. This is the only slide you're going to get from me today. Give a bit of an introduction about myself first. So Nathan McDonald, as Mark said at the start, I am a director for the ITSMF UK board. I'm also in consulting in Deloitte UK. And I've got a background in service management. Prior to getting into consulting, I used to do service management delivery for an outsourced organisation in the UK. So I've been doing this for 20 years or so. I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about first was actually following directly on from Martin's presentation just then, was actually what does agile service management mean? What does being more agile in service management mean? And I did think about whether or not this meant we should all be more agile ourselves. Does that mean we should all take up a new hobby? We can maybe do some yoga, increase our flexibility, and it's good for the mind as well. And I did threaten to Laura and Mark that I might suggest we all got up in the room and did some squats or maybe did some sun salutations or something, but don't worry, I won't make you do that. I think one of the things that I do want to sort of reflect on directly from Martin's presentation as well, though, is he spoke about how a lot of organizations have brought agile into their technology arenas by creating separate teams, creating some concept of an agile delivery team that in some way, shape or form sits aside from a traditional run organization or even a traditional change organization in some cases. And that reminded me of a blog I wrote but never published a number of years ago when Agile first came out, about whether or not the right answer to solving the problem of agility was to create a new organization or to double up on your organization. And I compared it to football, which is a big passion of mine, and thinking about if I wanted a more agile goalkeeper in order to be able to be more effective at stopping my opponent from scoring, I wouldn't put a second keeper in the goal. I'd just focus on trying to figure out what it is I could do to make my goalkeeper better, how I can make that goalkeeper serve the needs of the team. So for as much as a lot of organizations have created a sort of separate delivery organization around agile, I'm not a massive proponent of that. And I think that actually the right answer is figuring out what the right way to deliver technology for your business is as a single organization. And hopefully that ties a little bit to what I'm going to talk about today. That comes back to the kind of general sense of what people have about service management. The way in which service management has been implemented or is seen in many organizations is often as a gatekeeper, is often as the controls part of the organization that's responsible for governance and assurance and making sure that we are delivering things in a secure and safe fashion for our businesses. And that is a lot of reason why many sort of people who kind of want to deliver in agile fashion saw service management as a bit of a blocker, saw it as an old way of working, and kind of wanted to try and do something new. The reality of that, though, is over time, as agile practices have kind of become more embedded within organizations, as they've learned through failure, that things needed to be still delivered in a particular way. Some of those service management practices, some of those things we've always done, always known as service management professionals, are still relevant to how they deliver and how they go about delivering that kind of product-based type way. And that fundamentally, we want to kind of maintain those, secure delivery, that safer delivery. We want to deliver as soon as the business wants to deliver. We need to work out how those things are. So when I hear things like, delivering better value sooner, safer, happier, and a lot of my colleagues will find it hilarious that I'm quoting John Smart here, that actually those are the same things that service management was always talking about back in the day. We might use different terms to do it, but actually it was always that concept in mind. It was like, what is the business need from technology? How do we deliver what the business needs? And that includes pace as well as it includes control and governance. So in terms of where we are now, that means we've got some common ground. Actually, if you think about service management to its base principles, we're trying to deliver what the business wants, try and deliver the outcomes the business needs from our technology in order to deliver what ultimately the customer wants to get from that business. And therefore, we should be able to come up with a way to develop a strategy for service management that leans into our agile colleagues. So I want to talk about a few things in terms of where to start. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually, it's been mentioned a couple of times already, the concept of service versus the concept of products. Now, I did argue for a long time that the two terms were almost synonymous with each other. When the first definition of product came out that I saw and read, I could have argued that you replace one or two words within that definition, and it was actually very similar to the definition of service that ITIL 3 had. And you could get into a long debate and argument with people in the organization about which those two terms we should use. Fundamentally, though, and the reason why this is first on my list is it's actually about agreeing all your terminology with your entire organization that you want to use. How are you going to use the term product? How are you going to use the term service? How are you going to use associated terms like capability, like ways of working, like practice, in order to define what it is you want to do and deliver as a technology organization? So that's, I think, where we need to fundamentally start in defining a service management strategy that can lean into agile, making sure we have a commonality of terms, a commonality of things that we want to use and employ within our organization when we're talking about what it is we deliver. The second thing I then want to talk about is what that means in terms of frameworks. So we've talked a little bit about some of the agile practices that are out there. And when agile was first launched, it was a manifesto, and it was more about mindset. It was more about culture and a way of working that people wanted to adopt in their organizations. It was less about framework, about an approach, about processes. But those processes and frameworks have come through natural evolution of the way in which organizations have done. We've also got ITIL 4. We've got things like the SIAM body of knowledge. We've got things like ISO 27001, ISO 20K. We've got lots of things out there which define some kind of approach to how we should deliver as technology organizations that we can use and adopt within our organizations. And for me, service management and being service management professional is about understanding which of those frameworks are the right ones for us to employ and use within our organizations. And very much I see the evolution of service management being about helping our organizations to understand that, helping become the coaches and guidance and SMEs around those frameworks and approaches and how they should be adopted to deliver what our business needs. Moving a little bit away from more of the doing. So in those organizations where service management has been adopted and adapted as kind of the run parts of the organizations, think about actually how we can move those people who are running and doing the work to being coaches and guiders on how those things could be adopted within different parts of the organizations. Which leads into my next point, which is about devolving the responsibility for service management. So I said earlier on that it became evident within the agile delivery space that actually some of those key service management practices and principles were still relevant. We still need to understand how to deal with issues and faults and incidents when they occurred. We recognize the fact that actually when a change went live, there were some problems that we encountered, there were some defects that need to be fixed. And all those things went into our work, they went to the next potential release that was being developed through a sprint. And therefore actually thinking about that service management terms, those service management practices, how can we devolve those responsibilities from traditional service management teams into product-based teams? Where can we draw some of those lines of responsibility differently? So the roles and activities are still being done, but rather than having some central service management team and capability that's doing it, think about where they sit within your product-based delivery organization. And that ties very strongly into the next point I want to go on to, which is around proportional assurance activity. So again, I talked a little bit at the start, and Martin mentioned about the concept of service management being seen as a governance function within a lot of organizations, as a responsibility for control and making sure things are getting done safely. But actually some cases, and I've seen this myself with clients, I've seen it in organizations I've worked for, service management organizations often get themselves into a position where they're almost man-marking other teams to deliver and making sure that there's assurance around how those teams are delivering, particularly where there's suppliers involved in the end-to-end delivery in some way. And I've often seen organizations where a client has outsourced their SIAM capability and then built a retained IT function that is almost exactly the same as the outsourced provider as well, and doing all the same things almost a second time and inherently delaying the whole end-to-end delivery process. So thinking about actually what is the right governance, what is the right proportional governance you need to put in place? And again, where can you draw those lines? Where can you push that back into certain parts of the organization, take it away from a centralized control function if appropriate? And with both these last 2 points, the key thing to still remember, and this is where there is a challenge with certain industries in particular, is you do still have regulatory requirements you've got to meet, and those things need to be kind of met and shown and proven at the right stages. But again, those things are proportional. It's not necessarily one size fits all. And thinking about where you do those things and at what level you do them within your organization and where the roles and responsibilities for those things fit should all be part of, for me, what your service management strategy should look like to kind of help your organization deliver in a more agile fashion. And that comes to the next point, which comes off the back of that, which again, thinking about that one size fits all, is about enabling your organization to deliver. Martin showed an excellent, again, picture of ServiceNow as a tool, and we're all probably used to the idea of using some kind of core service management tool within our organizations these days and dictating the use of that tool maybe to our suppliers as well to parts of our organizations to deliver. But actually, one of the things that agile teams often deliver about, or product-based delivery teams often deliver about, is their need and desire to have flexibility in the tools they use to develop. And so we have to think about that for our organizations. And a key part of our service management strategy should be understanding where we want to draw those lines of, again, sort of control and responsibility around what we need our organization to use in order to be able to, again, meet our regulatory requirements, meet our governance requirements that our business needs and our business is comfortable with, but giving those teams the flexibility to be able to continue to deliver in the way they want to deliver, to be able to deliver at the pace they want to deliver at, and be able to respond to new technology change, which continues to evolve rapidly, and take advantage of any new things that come into the marketplace. So we want to enable that in some way, but maintain the right level of control within our organizations. And that comes back to the final point I want to make, really, which again goes actually almost back to the most fundamental point around agile, which I think is going to be a core part of our service management strategy, and indeed our operating models for our technology organizations, which is about mindset and culture. So what is the culture we want within our organization? What is the mindset we want our people to have? You know, in some organizations, it might actually be entirely right for us to have a very control and governance and assurance-based function, an assurance-based capability and culture of our technology organization, because that's what our business needs of us. In some organizations, particularly in those ones that are in the kind of fast-paced, new growth technology markets, actually having very little control and having much more focus on letting our people do what they need to do to react to changing business requirements is what we want. And therefore, the need for control and assurance is much more limited. But fundamentally, that comes back to what our culture is. The culture of our organization, the culture, and by organization, I mean the business, and the culture that we want our technology team to reflect on in respect of that. So I want to finish by giving some actual practical points. So I've talked a little bit about some of the key things to consider here, and I'll make sure these get summarized as well following this session in case people want to get some writing up done. But there's some sort of practical things that we can think about to actually enable this as well, which I thought was good to leave us with. The first one is around outcomes rather than outputs. So I think traditionally, again, and you asked about how do we make service level management more agile. For me, it's actually changing the focus from outputs to outcomes in part of it, and changing it to think about actually what is the business outcome that's being delivered by the services, by the products that we're delivering, not necessarily thinking about their level of availability or think about how responsive that we are being, but actually what business value is being driven or impacted by things that are happening within the organization. Linked to that, and the kind of second thing, is changing our focus about customer experience. So businesses are very good at this, about thinking about how what the service they're delivering externally is creating the right customer experience for those customers. I think if you look about the digital wave and digital enablement, digital transformation, that's what that's all about. We can apply those same concepts internally within our organization as well, and think about how we're delivering the right customer experience for our business users. Automation. Automation is hugely important to helping us deliver at pace, deliver faster, to be able to automate some of those things that we've done traditionally within our organizations, and actually thinking about how we can devolve those responsibilities into product teams. Enabling them through automation is one of the key ways in which we can do that. Proactivity over reactivity. And this has been talked about for years, about the idea of using monitoring in order to be able to identify faults early before our users report them. That's something that's been around for 20 years, but actually taking that through its kind of natural evolution, thinking about how we can get ahead of as much as we can for our businesses. Think about how new technology, when it comes out, can actually be used to enable the business, not just how we can help run the technology better. How can new technology help to run the business better, deliver better outcomes for the business? Thinking about how that technology can be used to do that. And again, forming that as part of our service management delivery, in terms of delivering value to our business, some kind of innovation function or capability within your organization or practice within your capability, to understand how new technology can be leveraged to deliver what the business needs. Consider enterprise, not just IT. So this is slightly linked to the last point. You'll hear a lot of service management tool vendors talk about enterprise service management these days. And a cynic might say they're doing that because they recognize the fact that their tool can be sold to HR and finance and legal and facilities as well. But actually, there is some sound, getting some laughs in the room for those at home. But there is actually some sound logic behind thinking about what technology is doing from an enterprise perspective, not just from an IT perspective. And historically, we've talked about things like the business of IT. We've talked about business and IT being closer together, and business relationship management being a key part of our capabilities that we need. And these things are all linked, actually. It's about thinking about how what we deliver as technology is enabling the business, not just about how we're delivering technology better for the business. And then the final thing that I want to close on is, again, just thinking about that proportional and devolved governance point. So understanding for your organizations, whatever industry you're in, what is the right level of governance to have in what circumstances? Where can you actually pull some of that governance back, change the approval levels, make some approvals automated? Where do you need to put controls in? And it will be different for different industries. Within public sector and FS, we have more regulatory controls. Within pharmaceutical, we have regulatory controls we need to do from a business perspective. what are the implications of those things? Where can we draw some of those lines and demarcation points? And can we do them in a different way, in a different place to what we do at the moment? Does it need to be IT's responsibility? Does it need to be a technology organization's responsibility? Is it a shared responsibility between yourselves and the business? Rethinking about those things and looking at that. So hopefully that's been a bit of a useful insight from myself in terms of some of the key points that I think we need to consider and some practical recommendations for how you can bring those things to life. I'm going to open it up to questions at this point, although I'm conscious that, again, for the benefit of those in the building, we're going to be going to a coffee break shortly, which will give people at home a chance to take a comfort break and grab a self-made one. But any questions in the room? Or from home, indeed.
Don't look so scared. So when you're developing your service management strategy, who are your key stakeholders to help you put that strategy together?
It's tempting to say everyone, right? But I think I think for me, it's those people within the organization that are responsible for delivering technology for the business, and that is maybe product owners, maybe product managers, definitely your senior leadership within your technology organization, and then your business relationship owners. It's those types of people are the key ones that I'll be looking to get the perspectives of the business and the need and understanding of what the business needs in order to be able to feed into it. And then your service management professionals in whatever guise that take, and when I use that term, I apply it unilaterally. I don't just necessarily mean to service delivery managers. I mean to incident managers, problem managers, even service desk agents, right? They all have perspectives and different perspectives that can help you understand the interactions that you have with the business. And I'm, just to kind of put this in there, service desk agents for me are perhaps the most single important role within your technology organization. They are your front door to your technology organization, everything that you do, right? And then actually, therefore, they have possibly the best understanding of the customer's frustrations, more so than a BRM ever will, because that'll be a measured conversation that'll happen over a formalized meeting in most cases. Whereas, the service desk agent is feeling the pain directly from the user that's called them or contacted them more, and therefore they've got much better insight of actually how people are feeling about the way in which technology is delivering.